Hello and welcome back to Stories with me, Jesse. Today we're once again looking into the experiences of people who have to argue with stubborn individuals that they are not an employee and would like to be left alone over at Reddit/idontworkherelady. Let me know what you think of these stories in the comments and feel free to provide your own suggestions for anything I should feature in a future installment. Brace yourself for some cases of mistaken identity, cause we're getting started now. Our first story is titled, I don't want to be on the news. Don't put me on camera. Not sure if this fits, but wasn't sure where else it would. I was standing in line to get into the supermarket today, and the person just before me was a surly older gentleman who was not wearing a mask or facial covering, and appropriately, wearing a biker jacket with a big patch that read, F*** helmet laws. The store had someone at the door, usually a teenager or an elderly greeter, whose job it is to ensure everyone entering the store has a face covering per their nationwide corporate mandate and under state law. As the man arrived at the greeter, who could not have been a day under 65, she said, "Excuse me, you need a face mask covering to enter," he said to the old woman in this macho, authoritative voice. "No, I don't. It's okay," and tried to walk into the store. The old woman goes, "Actually, sir, you do. It's not just policy anymore. It's the law." And he starts spouting off about how it's an unconstitutional law and how the greeter isn't in a position to enforce laws. A minute or two pass, and people further back who can't see what's happening at the front of the line are getting restless. They begin to try and see what's happening. The guy is saying, "Look, you're holding the line. If the masks really do work, then everyone who's wearing one is safe, right? And if they don't, then why do you care?" And she was getting kind of desperate at this point and said, "Well, sir, because I could lose my job if I let you in there." This is where I come in. I hadn't spoken up before because this was a big guy, and I'm just a student who's no good in a confrontation. I figured adding myself to the mix would only make the situation worse, so I took out my phone and started recording. I figure he would be less likely to do something violent to the greeter or escalate further if he knew he was on camera. Here's what I had forgotten. I was wearing a shirt from a 5K that was sponsored by our local news, so had Channel X Eyewitness News in huge print across the front. The guy's wife goes, "Good Lord, Howie, the news is filming. What if my work sees this? Jesus!" So he turns to me and starts telling me he doesn't consent to be on TV, and starts making a speech how we're all treading on the Constitution, not respecting people's rights to bodily autonomy or privacy. I'm trying to tell him I'm not with the news, and he's like, "I don't care if you're on the clock or not. I don't want to be on camera, and I won't be forced to wear anything I don't want to wear. When did we forget this is America?" Now this is where it got crazy. The line stretched all the way around the building, and people towards the end were realizing it hadn't moved in a while and were coming up to investigate. An even bigger, more macho guy comes lumbering up and asks what the problem is, sees this guy going off at the terrified elderly greeter, me shaking holding my phone, and is like, Sir, what's the problem right now? People are trying to shop." The maskless guy tells him, and I quote, "Get away from me. This isn't your business." The more macho guy proceeds to whip out a badge and identify himself as an off-duty police officer, and that the law is in fact his business. First, he tries to have the cop arrest me for putting him on the news without his consent, but I just played dumb at that point. My adrenaline was through the roof, and if I had been able to retain presence of mind, I would have left by that point and shopped somewhere else. The biker guy is now saying to the cop, "This isn't what you went into the academy dreaming about, man, is it? You're not stopping bad guys. You're forcing regular people to go against their beliefs." Cop said, "No one is forcing you to do anything, sir. You are free to make your own choices. You can put on a mask or you can go home. Decide which you would like to do, because there is a line here." The biker guy keeps saying he isn't doing anything illegal and he has a right to shop in a public business, and the cop just shakes his head and starts quoting the official mask law, and the guy is breaking at him. But the biker guy is just talking over him at that point, and the cop realizes he isn't getting anywhere. So the cop says, "Look, I don't want to escalate this, but you're not giving me a choice in this situation. If you won't leave of your own volition, you're trespassing," and starts explaining what will happen. The biker guy is ready to stand firm and says he knows he's in the right, but his wife is smarter and says, "Jesus, Howie, are you insane? The man's a police officer," and very ashamedly apologizes as she forces him to leave with various threats. Took nearly 15 minutes to get into the store, caused a major backlog of shoppers, and made a poor elderly woman fear for her safety. Just wear the mask or get your groceries delivered. I mean, seriously, people, of all the hills to die on. Yikes. That dude was crazy. I totally get that we technically have the right not to wear a mask. I'm a rebel myself and don't wear one unless absolutely necessary. But rules are rules. If you wish to enter certain places of business, thank goodness that officer was there to help defuse the situation, and bless the surly man's wife for getting him the hell out of there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story, or even the whole mask thing in general, in the comments section below. Moving on, our next story is called Snob-hole needs to mind her own business. R.E. Possible Tourette shopper. As mentioned in prior threads, I'm a grocery/delivery vendor who stocks brand-specific items for supermarkets, but am not employed by any of the stores directly. I have a route of stores to visit and pull product from the back of a specific brand of food and refresh the supply. Most name-brand beer, sodas, chips, snack cakes, and other brands employ their own workers who aren't store employees. I get several "I don't work here, lady" incidents per day, but most are "oops, sorry" situations. After reading this subreddit a bunch, I have started to scope out where in the store the over-the-counter reading glasses sections are, in case I encounter any of the extra special hose beasts who insist that specifically I must help them, so I can lead them there to help them pick out a pair. Yesterday at Small Shart, there was a little old gray-haired man shopping who would occasionally head spasm rather violently, like he had just been stun-gunned in the neck, and each time would shout very loudly. I know from watching a cute TikToker who has a less severe form which resembles his motion that this could simply be Tourette syndrome. People with this seem to have a signature verbal yelp, but don't have any cognitive choice in what the yelp is. The TikToker has a pretty cute yelp and explains some aspects of their own variety and experience in some posts. So this guy wasn't hurting anyone, but would, just occasionally, jerk his head very violently, but catch himself each time, and would shout at a really high volume in the moment of surprise. As he went around shopping, he could be heard making his shout from 8+ aisles over. He wasn't interacting with anyone, just minding his own business and going off a shopping list like any other person. He came down a somewhat crowded aisle I was working on at the time, and I just let him be, but saw other people staring and giving him some space. I understand also that some who have this experience a higher frequency of tics if under additional stress than just the normal frequency alone, such as being judged in public by it, so I just let him do his thing. As he rounded the corner out of sight, a few people who were near me on this aisle muttered that the man was obviously crazy and that he shouldn't be out in public and might hurt someone. I explained a little about the possible condition and that this could actually be a pretty big milestone for him personally, being brave enough to go out in public and trying to control it, and being able to handle the stress of the stares and whispers, and that if people could stop talking about him, it could actually help reduce the outbursts, possibly. One feral snob-hole of a lady came up to me a little while later after he'd moved on several aisles over, clopping in her business Karen shoes, the wrong direction down the aisle and not wearing a mask, naturally, and on a mission. She sternly barked at me about him and told me that he needed to be removed because he was frightening other customers. I told her politely I wasn't employed by the store and that I didn't have any say in it who gets removed. I tried explaining that I hadn't seen any frightened customers myself yet before getting cut off as she flapped her mouth blubber at me again about how concerned she was that he was going to hurt someone and that he didn't belong out in public. I was tempted to say that if anyone needed removing, it should be her, via her own 2 cloven hooves, right out the door with that attitude. I was under a time crunch and didn't really have time to find a ladder to climb up in order to clock one across a chin that high up in the air. I just dismissed her away again. That I am not employed by the store. There's nothing I can do about it. I stated that I'd seen him for about the past hour and he hasn't made any sign of hurting anybody and that he's just then glared at her with eyebrows raised and leaning toward her, minding his own business. She squinted at me and scowled, and then clopped away, and I didn't hear anything from her again. My main regret was not having available time to ask him if I could gather up what left was on his shopping list or help in some way. Carry on the good fight, Mr. Man. I'm on defense for you. That poor gentleman didn't ask to have his condition and was likely trying very hard just to carry on and not bother anyone. But that horrible woman, like most Karens, felt compelled to complain about him instead of trying to muster up a little empathy. Having worked in retail myself, I've seen customers like these and know that their screams can be a little startling, but have been able to successfully explain their situation to concerned customers, and they're usually pretty understanding. Of course, there's always an exception to the rule, like this story, for example. Either way, I'm glad this person was kind enough to stand up for him. We're all different, and that's okay. Our final story is titled, How I Met the Nicest Old Lady. So this happened about 5 years ago, and I decided to post this, as 2 weeks ago, she had passed away. It was like a chunk of my life pulled from me and thrown away. It reminded me of how we first met. This will be quite a short story, though. So about 5 years ago, I was dropping off my mom and dad at the airport as it was their 50th anniversary, and about a minute after dropping them off, an old lady opened my car door and gave me her address. I was slightly confused at first, but then I realized she thought I was a taxi. There were no taxi signs on my car, nor was I near any taxi area. I told her I am not a taxi, and she apologized and was about to leave. But I told her I could drive her home free of charge. The drive was about 1 hour from Southampton Airport to where she lived, and on the way, we talked about how our families were doing. It was sad hearing how little family she had left. It was only her daughter and her grandson, and most of the time, she was all alone with no one to talk to. I decided to give her my phone number and told her to call me anytime she wanted to. She thanked me once she got home and entered her house as it was quite late. I went home and went to bed as I was tired, and for the next 5 years, we met up, talked, and called each other. But it was when she started not picking up I started getting worried. I got a call from her daughter that she had passed away, and I was devastated. She was in her bed and she died in her sleep. After her death, the only person I could talk to was myself. My parents are at home and I don't live with them anymore, so I was stuck at that point. I wrote this story as more of a remembrance than anything else, and to let my feelings out. I hope this wasn't too depressing for anyone. That is the end. What a truly touching story. You met an older woman by chance, helped her get home out of the kindness of your heart, and quickly became her friend. You two really clicked, and you ended up being like family in the end. I'm so sorry that she's passed, but you're one more person to remember her, and all because you decided to do a good deed, and that is truly a beautiful thing. For every crazy Karen or Carl story out there, there's sometimes one like this one that truly strengthens my faith in humanity, and it really makes me feel that big-hearted people still exist, and if there could be more of them out there, there's always hope of a sunny and harmonious future for our children, their children, and so on. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you once again for tuning in with me, Jesse. What did you think of these stories? Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content, and check out what other stories I have for you. Have a little respect for yourself and others today. Stay positive and keep on smiling. I'll catch you in the next one.